Hello and welcome to this month's edition of the Divine Comedians podcast. I'm your host, Paula Wiseman, and today I am lucky enough to be chatting with writer, comedian, actor and podcaster, Alex Lowe. So, hey Alex, it's great to be chatting with you today.
Great to be on here. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you. So normally I start off by talking about childhood and what you were like as a kid, whether you were a funny kid, but you were actually a child actor. So, I mean, how did that all start initially?
Well, I grew up in Pinner in northwest London. Very sort of lovely, middle-classy childhood. My dad was a sort of semi-professional saxophonist, and my mum worked for Harrow Council for the social services. And I think from about the age of 11, I wanted to there's a place in Pinner called the Studio School, which was a very sort of serious drama school. It wasn't a sort of drama club or, sort of arsing around. It was very serious. It was run by two women who used to teach at the Guildhall. They'd had some very sort of well-known actors in their time who they taught before, and they had some very good actors who sort of went through the Studio School in Pinner. And I used to do duologue lessons, with someone else, and I would do, my private lessons and go in and do group lessons. And it was just, I suppose, one of those things. It was a sort of a hobby, just like anyone might be going to piano or swimming or whatever. But I really wanted to be an actor, and I was a little bit of a kind of show off, and I used to do impressions and play the piano. My brother and we came second in the 1979 Wolves Cornetto Junior Talent Contest, so we were sort of really into comedy. It was, some families, I don't know, my dad always kind of thought comedy was a valuable art form, and there was no snobbery about that. He used to take us to sort of see people like Mike Yarwood and the two Ronnies.
Oh, wow.
West End shows. I remember going to see Billy Liar starring Michael Crawford and this sort of thing. So this is rather a long answer, but anyway, the point is, I went to this drama school, and I joined an agent who was attached to that drama school, and I just went up for various jobs, and I got a job in something called Theatre Box, which was an ITV kids drama, one Christmas when I was about 13. And then I did the play Another Country, which then became the film with Kenneth Branagh and it wasn't with Kenneth Branagh. The play was with Kenneth Branagh and Rupert Everett, but the film was with Colin Firth and Rupert Everett. And so I did this play in the West End for a long time when I was 14, and I did Mansfield Park for the BBC when I was 15 in 1983. And actually, so, I've really done nothing else but be an actor all my life, thankfully, so far. But, my parents, they were not really very sort of theatrical types. They thought it was a sort of flash in the pan hobby that I would do for a while. But I was very, very dedicated, and it's the only thing I've ever really wanted to do. And to this day, I mean, honestly, I thank my lucky stars that I'm allowed to do it. It's just thrilling to be able to do this sounds a bit pretentious, but what is a very natural thing for anyone to do, which is, kids play in the playground and invent things and take on character. It's an absolute honor at 53 to still be allowed to do it. That's a very long answer, but
that's what we want. That's what we want. So the comedy aspect of it, obviously it's a big part of your life now. I mean, was that a natural progression from the acting, or did it kind of just happen naturally? Would you do impressions and stuff when you were a kid, or?
Yeah, I used to do a lot of impressions, the sort of impressions that everyone did at that time. Frank Spencer,
Yes.
Tommy Cooper, whatever. Yeah, I used to do a lot of impressions, and I mean, as a kid, the only badge I ever got at Cubs was the performance badge, the entertainer's badge. Just had one badge there, and I used to do a thing where at Cubs very often for the last half an hour of Cubs, it would be the Alex Lowe show where I'd get on the stage, do something I'd written, and people would be sort of joining in, and we'd maybe have a little bit of a rehearsal. And, at our church, the Methodist church in Pinner, we would, there would be sort of family things. I mean, we weren't very religious, but there'd be like a family Christmas show or something, which very often would feature Alex Lowe's latest production. So I did a lot of that sort of thing, but I became quite a serious actor. I just wanted to act, but comedy, I think, actually doing as a profession, comedy, I only really got stuck into that when I was about 30, just because I wanted to go to Edinburgh and make things happen, and that seemed the thing I was most comfortable with. And I think sort of now, if I'm known for anything, if anyone's remotely interested, I'm probably known as a sort of comedy actor, comic actor, rather than anything else. But, you can't really be too choosy. I'm very happy to work in anything, not do a serious play, because I'm a comic actor.
Yeah, I think you've got to be quite extrovert as well, haven't you, to do what you do?
I think you have to be extrovert. Yeah, I suppose so. But I mean, I don't think if I just went out and started showing off, I think that would be very tiresome for everyone. And I think I would have the common sense to know that that's not the point. Sam Delaney, I've worked with him quite a lot, and he's a presenter and a comedy writer, and used to be the editor of Heat magazine. He was telling me the other day about when he was at school and he wanted to be an actor, and he just thought it was just a question of showing off. And he very quickly realised, hold on, there are other people in the school who have actually learned lines and they can actually do it. So I think, just wanting to show off would be very boring after a while for people.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people listening will probably know you best for being Barry from Watford, and of course, Psychic Extraordinaire, Clinton Baptiste. So let's talk a bit about Barry. So where did he come from originally? Was he a voice initially that kind of became something more tangible? How did it all start?
Well, all my elderly relatives were from southeast London. They're sort of greengrocers, and some of them were night watchmen, carrying a light on the Thames, Bermondsey, Deptford, around there. And then during the war, there was a move to get these people out of quite a dangerous area for the Blitz. And I think they moved to South Harrow in the suburbs, near where I am now. And so I just always grew up with that sort of old style Cockney, and they all was quite old when I first met them, and they had that terrible thing where your esophagus sort of drops at the back of the throat. But lovely, lovely people. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know that many of them. A lot of them had died before I was aware of them. But there was sort of my old aunt and my old nan.
Yeah.
And, a couple of old aunts and nans and what have you. And so it's sort of based on them, really. But it's affectionate. I would never, Barry has a certain pride. I would never insult these people. I've got, a lot of respect for them. So that's really where it comes from. My old nan, a combination of my nan and my great aunt.
Yeah. So how did the prosthetic aspect of Barry come into being?
Well, I mean, nowadays, I wish I'd never done that, because it's a rod for my own back. When you see people like Mrs. Merton and Count Arthur Strong and these people, they don't bother with that. And I don't know why I thought it was such a good idea to do that. And it has become a bit of a look for Barry, which I'm trying to take away. But I tell you how, I did an advert, you might remember many years ago, some people might remember, it was on quite a lot, dried blackthorn cider, where we were aliens and we drunk out of the pint pots with our fingers. And we had these sort of cone heads. Well, the guy who did the prosthetics, is a very well-known prosthetic expert, and he was a pioneer in that stuff, called Aaron Sherman, and he lives out in Chingford. And I just, we sort of hit it off when we did this advert. And not long after that, when I was 30, I did a show in Edinburgh about British wrestling, and I wanted him to make a big giant haystack's head so I could play giant haystacks, shove it on my head, which he did. So that when I wanted to do Barry, I went to him, and he very, very kindly, because it's a hell of a lot of work for him, he very kindly made me this thing. I think he'd heard me on LBC on Ian Lee's show.
Yeah.
And he agreed to do it, and he really did it for not very much money. And he's often providing me with this prosthetic at cost price. But he's a great mate of mine nowadays. So that's how it happened. He taught me how to put it on, and you add part A and part B of the glue, and then you sort of have this sort of molding stuff that puts it onto your face so you can't see the join, which I learned very quickly. I mean, I often think if he could see the way I do it hurriedly above a pub about to go on stage, he would have a fit, because I'm sure, my handiwork is not nearly good enough. But as I say, I'm trying. As I get older now, I need the mask less and less. So I might just try and jettison it and just be Barry. I still have the teeth and the wig,
Yeah, I suppose it's a way of keeping yourself separate and Barry as a separate entity.
I think really, I find getting on stage so frightening. I mean, I really, really, I get very, very nervous. I don't know why. Even to this day, I find it terrifying. I feel sick and I think, why am I doing this? And so it is like a lot of actors and any performers, even if it's not a physical mask, you sort of psychologically put something else on to go on stage so you don't get hurt. And it's really nice to hide behind, and you have glasses and a wig and funny teeth, and and of course, if you've died on your arse at a gig, no one knows it's you when you're leaving, which is the lovely thing. But what I did find is actually when you go and speak to the audience and stand up, people love you to actually engage with them. That's the sort of difference. Sometimes you find people don't really like that. They like the artifice to watch you, but if Barry leans in with that horrible prosthetic, I find people, they're either frightened or they kind of go, oh, I don't want to spoil the illusion, So that's it, Aaron, really. I have him to thank for that look.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing about Barry. He's got a whole backstory, being the greengrocer, and obviously the lovely Margaret, who we hear so much about on the podcast. But it's like you and Margaret have kind of, well, not you and Margaret, Barry and Margaret obviously have kind of evolved over the years. It's been like a saga.
Well, initially Catherine Tate actually played Margaret on an LBC call. I mean, I've known her for some years, and she just agreed to do it because she is very, very accurate, I think, with that character. It's so bloody accurate, that lovely turn of phrase.
Yes.
And that it's sort of, oh God, I can't explain it, but that really, when I hear that, reminds me of some of those old Cockney ding-dongs I used to know. But I have to say, I've probably been very, very cheeky with Margaret because I do this podcast with Dan Skinner, Angelos and Barry, which is sort of, it's a version of Barry. It's not really the lovely, cuddly Barry we know.
No,
it's a bit like Derek and Clive,
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're allowed to, it's just a conduit for our filthy ramblings. So I always think there's a sort of mainstream Barry, and then there's the Alex Lowe version of Barry. Poor Margaret comes in for a pounding. That's what I was going to say.
Poor Margaret. Margaret.
Go on.
So how did the partnership, talking about Dan stroke Angelos there, so how did you meet Dan originally?
Well, I think we'd been in, I seem to remember we were in some Channel 4 thing, and I knew him vaguely from that. And then he came to perform at the 100 Club, where I do my Barry from Watford, Barry's Bingo, which I used to do and I really want to do again one day. And just because we really needed someone who was it seemed to suit a really funny comic character that evening. It wasn't just straight stand-up. It was something slightly wild and grotesque about what was happening on the stage. And so Dan came along and did Angelos. And then someone asked me to do a radio show on Fubar, which is an internet radio station. And I tried various things. Just as Barry, it was like, you want someone to bounce off a bit. And I tried a couple of people to come in. And then I thought, of course, why not have Angelos? And we started doing this thing. And then they ended up owing us a fortune. They just didn't pay us for weeks on end. So we went, sod it, let's go and do it ourselves. And we just started doing this podcast, which I suppose we've been doing, must be 7 years off and on now. And we moved companies and we now do it for Great Big Owl. And it's just, that is the case in point, being allowed to sit around with your mate, making this stuff up and we don't really earn very much money, but there is a tiny bit of money. It's a, you think, God, what a way to earn a living. I always think there are people doing triple heart bypass surgery as we speak, and there's us saying, "My Margaret went to the toilet." You know, so pathetic.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of smut in the podcast.
There is a lot of smut. I think, when people say, "Oh, well, it's very blue and all that," I think, it's like cartoon smut. It's not. When you see Peter Cook and that horrible misogynistic stuff from Derek and Clive, you go, well, we're not doing that. It's really schoolboyish and sort of silly. I would hate anyone to be offended. I mean, it is a bit rude, but I mean, God, I think there's a lot worse out there. It's not drill, is it? I mean, it's not talking about stabbing people. It's two silly men talking about really childish things, and I think it's funny. It's kind of inventive. I don't think it's just wallowing in scatological stuff. I think there's some funny stuff with it. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is all it is.
No, I mean, it's one of those podcasts you can listen to episodes over and over again.
Oh, good.
My favourite is the one where Margaret loses her head and gets a ping pong ball.
Yeah, that's one of my favourites.
It's a classic.
I don't know why I was laughing so much that day. It just really made me laugh. I mean, the thing is, Dan Skinner makes me laugh so much. I mean, he is so bloody funny. And before I spoke to you this morning, he just did something on my Clinton Baptiste podcast. And I just said to my wife, I can't keep asking. I'm always asking Dan to do stuff for me. I mean, he's a great mate of mine. But, if you want a job done properly, ask Dan, because he's so funny. He's such a brilliant actor. And I always think with Angelos, it's just, tiny little things are always what make it for me. Little turns of phrase or little things in his voice. It's so funny. He's a brilliant actor.
Yeah, you definitely bounce off one another, and just like when you lose it and you go into you just start laughing. God, it's just it's hilarious. We love it. We love it, Alex.
He genuinely makes me laugh. He is such a funny fella. I mean, in real life, we do spend all day texting each other with funny things and little stupid in jokes. So
poor old Kim Woodburn at the moment's taking a bit of a hammering.
Oh God, yeah, I know. But even that, I like to think these are sort of cartoon versions. It's just a sort of well, I hope no one's upset by it.
Yeah, no, it's just what we need, at the moment.
Good.
We lockdown. So we've got to talk about cheap, or cheap, as Barry calls it, with Noel Edmonds a few years ago. Everyone loved it. Like it was so anarchic. I mean, why do you think there was no second series?
Did everyone love it? I don't think anyone loved it. Did they?
We all loved it. We all loved it. My mum didn't know what was going on, but
this was a TV show I did with Noel Edmonds about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
For Channel 4, Hat Trick. And I really thought, like so many times in my ridiculous career, it was about to launch something huge. I've had films that were about to take off and be huge. I've had HBO pilot I did with Steve Coogan and Justin Theroux I thought was going to absolutely launch. So many things, so many near misses, and this was one of them. And it was a game show called Cheap, and it was a sort of game show meets sitcom where Barry from Watford was the sort of warehouse manager, had some other really great comedy actors, it had some great comedy actors, improvisers, but I just think we didn't have enough time to rehearse. We didn't have enough money for writers incessantly writing. Cover 30 hours of television and just hope for the best was a little bit tricky. Having said that, it had a lot of potential. If we'd have kept going, I like all these things, if we'd had another go and they'd given us a second series, there's so much learnt from the first series. And I just think it could have been really funny, and I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I was absolutely gutted when nothing happened with it, but it sort of came and went, and it was unfortunate because it also went out in the summer when no one saw it. And I was told by Channel 4, oh no, there's never ever a downtime now. It's not like the old days. Anyone can watch anything at any time. You can watch it on the iPlayer or whatever. Yeah. And there's no such thing as downtime. We haven't released this in the middle of summer because they don't like it. I don't know whether they did or they didn't, but it just came and went, and it was a choker, really. Because, you know, I think mums, or I say mums, it's not being sexist, parents picking up their kids would have liked it.
Yeah.
But it was sort of at a time when they weren't doing that, or it was inconvenient. I think it was like 3 o'clock, just when people would be going out to get their kids. I think it was July it started. And then there was no students around. It would have been very kitschy amongst the students. And it just seemed to be the scheduling let it down as well. But
it was a great concept though, wasn't it? Such a really great concept.
Yeah, I really loved it. And it was just, I mean, I'd love to do it again. And, you know, after a while, your confidence builds up. You do 30 hours of something. By the end of it, I thought it was cooking really nicely. So what do I know? I don't think anyone wants it now.
I don't know. I've still got images of Barry in a mankini, which haunt my dreams.
You lucky thing. I can send you the... that was funny, wasn't it?
Oh dear. So let's talk about Clinton now. So I mean, how much input into his creation did you have, or did Peter Kay give you him fully formed? How did it all kind of work?
Well, Clinton Baptiste, you know, it's a character from Peter Kay's Phoenix Nights. No, I would like to say that I invented it. I didn't. I think Neil Fitzmaurice came up with the name. He and Peter wrote it with Dave Spikey. No, I mean, I just got a phone call one day from Peter Kay saying, have I got a part for you? and he was a great part because bloody 22 years later, I'm still talking about it. 20 years later. So it was, I mean, I think I sort of had a contribution in the on the day filming. I threw in a few lines and Peter said, just improvise a bit. So I like to think I'm responsible for some of those turn into catchphrases now. People shout at me, you got to be cruel to be kind. Don't shoot the messenger, all that stuff. So that was just from improvising on the day. So I'm glad I feel I did have a little bit of input, but honestly, no, it's entirely their creation as a concept, as a look. And I think it's probably obviously based on Derek Acora.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Nowadays, I've built up a history for Clinton, and Peter Kay has just been very, very kind, and he lets me do it. I do always check in with him. I don't just sort of carry on doing it. I'd hate for him to pull the plug on the bloody thing. So I'm careful to sort of tell him what I'm up to. And so far, touch wood, he's quite happy for me to carry on with it.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing amazing things, isn't he, Clinton, at the moment? Yeah, obviously the podcast did amazingly well. And then the tour obviously has kind of been rescheduled for, you know, once we're out of, but people love him.
Yeah, I mean, it is going well. I'm really delighted. I was so gutted that the tour stopped halfway through. You know, we were doing a tour all around the country, and it was selling ridiculous amounts of tickets. I mean, really just took me by surprise. And I mean, it was too good to be true. And I thought, how, you know, I just want to do this for the rest of my career. I just thought, at last, all these years of piloting this and having this idea and doing a couple of days on a TV here, there and everywhere. And as I say, so many near misses with things that were about to take off. I thought, this is all I want to do now. You know, what could be better than being on stage with, it's not my creation, but it was my writing and my interpretation.
Yeah.
And people complain about staying in hotels. Who doesn't? I love staying in hotels. I mean, they cook your breakfast for a kickoff.
Home. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was loving all that. And I was traveling up and down the country with my stage manager, Alex, who was a lovely guy. We got on like a house on fire. And suddenly it stopped like that.
Yeah.
And then it got postponed. Then it got postponed again. And now we're going out in the autumn. And I've got a new show to do. So I've those people who had tickets to the old show are going to see a new, bigger, better show And luckily, everyone seems happy to hold on to their tickets. So it is going well for Clinton, and the podcast seems to do well. And I do a live show on a Thursday, sort of every other Thursday. But yeah, I don't hope people don't get sick of it. I want people to enjoy it for a long time. Yeah.
Put new and improved across the posters.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, luckily the poster is a different design, and it's obviously a different show. So
yeah, I mean, is that part of it as well? Putting on the wigs and doing the makeup and stuff. Obviously, Barry and Clinton are both kind of connected in that respect. But they're both, they hide you as a performer.
Yes.
You were talking about your nerves. You're nervous going on stage and stuff. Does that kind of help a little bit because you're not going out as yourself?
No, it really does. Dan Skinner was talking about, I mean, occasionally if we're sitting in some green room about to go on in some pub or art centre or whatever it is, comedy club, I'll often text him going, "Oh, I'm not feeling this. I feel sick," and he will do the same with me because you're sort of, well, let's say a third of it, I don't know, difficult to put a figure on it, but a lot of it is to do with the persona. It's not just about being a regular stand-up with a lot of great gags. You've got to, these people have got to buy into it quite quickly with Angelos and Clinton and Barry. So saying, actually you get on there and you bring the full force of the energy of the character. Suddenly you go, oh yeah, I remember now. This is what people like. But when you're sitting there looking at your script thinking, God, this looks a bit thin, so I think the character brings a lot to it. And that's why I always think I'm much more of a character actor than I am a stand-up. It's my thing is all about the sort of three-dimensionality of the character. It's not just, I was talking to my mate last night. I'm doing a bit of research because the new show is about Vegas, and
right.
Clinton's been in Vegas. And there's a friend of mine who lives out in the States, and he is a stand-up, and he goes up and down the country. But he's done lots of gigs in Vegas, and I just wanted to ask him some questions about it. And he was saying the Americans don't really go for people dressing up and doing this character.
Yeah.
It's a very difference in culture there. And he said they want to know that there's a sort of inkling of truth in what you're saying, and this artifice is not what they like. So it strikes me it's a totally different thing. In Britain, we just coming from a totally different culture, which is about sort of pantomime and sort of larger than life stuff. So going up and down the country, it's a sort of uniquely British thing, and it's a uniquely British way that I perform it. I think, you get weird clairvoyance all over the world, but that sort of end of the pier cheesy thing that I do is uniquely English, British, and I think people sort of pick up on that in this country.
Yeah, that end of the pier comment made me think about Doris Stokes when she was giving information to the government about for the lockdown and stuff. Yeah. No, it was in the podcast. It's all right. It's just me being.
Oh, I did.
It's me being a geeky fan. Sorry.
What, is this from Barry? Barry said that.
Yeah. There was end of the pier psychic Doris Stokes was giving information to Chris Whitty a few weeks ago.
Oh God, I never listened back. I listened back once, and then.
That's the thing, people listen to them. I say like the ping pong ball one. I think I must have listened to a dozen at least.
Really?
You go back and you listen to them, and they're still just as funny, and that's the beauty of it as well. Beautiful. I mean, talking about character comedy there, so it's been a big thing for a long time now, hasn't it? You've got the likes of John Shuttleworth, Count Arthur Strong, Angelos, obviously, Alan Partridge. So I don't know. Do you think it is a very British thing? People seem to really associate and invest in these characters who they know are not real people. But
is that what
as a performer?
Is it a British thing? What that people like? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean,
I can't think of many American people like character comedy.
I suppose not sort of larger than life in that way. I don't know. I think with any character comedy, I suppose the thing is what is really appealing is if there's a real nugget of truth in it. I think if I just came on as a pantomime dame and was, it's not really good enough, is it? You've got to this. I mean, Barry Humphries, he's a sort of larger than life, playing Dame Edna. But it's not, it's those little tiny, lovely turns of phrase. It's the little stuff that's so kind of exacting and precise in that sort of shell of this kind of artifice. That's good, isn't it? I mean, as I said about Dan, it's a kind of grotesque, this character he plays. But what I love, for example, is when he plays this sounds very pretentious, but when he plays a different status, when he does Angelos, who's trying to be a little bit cool, that is what's so lovely. Those little, the kind of precision of that.
Yeah.
Or, I can't think, but, when Clinton gets indignant or something, and there's a little aside under his breath, these lovely things that say so much about the character. Just coming on and doing a flouncy thing, which is, oh no, I do. It's not that. It's the precision, I think.
Yeah, we've got to mention Ramon as well, your nemesis.
Ramon. Yeah, Lewis MacLeod plays Ramon.
He's brilliant, isn't he? Such a great actor. Brilliant.
Well, Lewis MacLeod, for anyone out there who doesn't know, he must be, I would say he's probably the best impressionist in the world. I don't know about other countries, but I can't believe there's anyone better in the world than him. He is brilliant, and he does dead ringers, and he does a lot of, I write a lot for him. We have a little bit of an understanding, me and Lewis, where I write material for him and he appears on my show. It's either that or pay him, which I'm not going to do. So it's a quid pro quo. And he's just brilliant, Lou, and he's a great mate of mine. I'm always sort of, we did a thing today where he played Jon Snow, the newsman. So brilliant, so accurate. And so Ramon, people like about Ramon, this confrontation between him and Clinton, where they're both equally tacky, end of the pier, clairvoyant mediums. And so there's a lot of toing and froing and sort of nasty, bitchy comments. People love that, in a safe environment.
Yeah, and the last series of the podcast, it was a great concept that it was all kind of based around this healing festival.
Yeah,
that they were all they all appeared at, and the fact that Clinton and Ramon were stuck in a tent together.
Yeah,
like, oh
well, we. That's very kind of you to say that about the healing festival. I think it was like recording War and Peace, in the bloody lockdown. It was. Can you imagine? Trying to get everyone on. Because we couldn't meet up, and everyone did it on Clean Feed or one of these very, clear lines down the internet, which is very difficult. You really want to be in the studio interacting with each other. It's not the easiest thing. And then you get people on here whose microphones don't work, and it's picking up on the internal mic of the laptop. And it was really, really hard to do. And for the series 4, I'm just sticking with back in the studio. The other thing is, people like the simplicity of very short sketches with like one or two people in it. I introduced a whole raft of different characters in the Healing Festival, and it was all right. I think it had tons of gags in it, but I'm going back to what I did before now with series 4.
It was a proper story though, but even when you listen to it and there's all the background noise and it's like you're at a festival and you could hear all, what was going on outside. And
I'm glad you said that. For a while it was very difficult, but then I managed to get a hold of very subtle recordings of, if you go online and you want crowd noise of disgust, you can get this download this stuff free, but it sounds like no body of people ever made that noise. So I had to be really precise on how we got this stuff, and little audience titters or the sound of mild displeasure from an audience, or the stuff that really sounded real, because you couldn't do it in the room with the actors, you just didn't have them.
Yeah.
So it was quite a hard thing to do. It was pretty exhausting. And that was the first lockdown. And now with we're coming out of what are we on? The third lockdown? I don't know. Third or fourth lockdown.
Like
I've got series 4, which I've also been doing remotely, obviously, but it's been easier with 1 or 2 people in a sketch. You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, you've appeared in some of the best known comedy shows in recent years. We've got Toast of London, you're in Peep Show, The Fast Show, many, many moons ago, House of Fools with Vic and Bob and Dan, obviously. Yeah. So, I mean, would you say that a lot of your work involves making connections? I've talked about this with a lot of other people, and it's all about making connections with...
Well, it's a very kind way of saying, would you say a lot of your work involves you turning up for just one day at a time?
I'd take it. Just take that one, Alex, you know?
Yeah, making connections. Well, you know, I've sort of been around for so long now that I sort of know a lot of people. I'm so delighted. I just got asked to be in Steve Coogan's, Alan Partridge.
Oh, wow.
What's the latest one called? I never remember what it's called. This
is
the day.
Track.
No, whatever it's called. Time now, whatever it's called. This is now. Anyway,
Excellent.
The new one. And it was so nice to just be asked for once to not have to audition for something, which I think just happens just because I've been around for so long. But yeah, the other handy thing is you do meet people along the way. And so when you get to doing podcasts and live shows on the internet or whatever, you can ask people and they hopefully happily give up their time because you have a bit of a friendship with them. But yeah, I mean, I make no bones about it. It's quite hard sometimes turning up for one day on something, which is an entire series.
Yeah.
So I'm always tapping up in things, and it's sort of easier if you're part of the main cast and you get in the swing of things, because apart from anything, you go and sit in a porter cabin or a Winnebago, whatever, and then they say, can we have you on set now? And then we have the heads of department round here at rehearsal. And you're thinking, I can't cock this up. No one knows me.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we hear the lines? And you're thinking, I've been sat in a hotel last night trying to learn these lines. You know, it's a tremendous pressure because everyone's looking at you. Who's this bloke? Yeah. He's coming. Is he going to be any good? Because we're used to this lot and they're quite quick. You know, you really don't want to be cocking it up. I've always found that a bit nerve-wracking, but look, I'll happily do anything.
I mean, that's the thing with the Fast Show. You know, you're going into there's an established group of performers.
Yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago.
It was,
I sort of knew, actually, that was right at the very start of the Fast Show.
Yeah.
So they weren't particularly, I don't think they knew each other that well.
Yeah.
But, and I remember going to rehearsals there, and I'd just done something with Charlie Higson and Paul Whitehouse, which was a sitcom, another thing that was going to explode, and nothing happened again. So I sort of knew them, and so I was sort of slightly more comfortable with that one. But yeah, I mean, it's lovely to be in an iconic Suit You sketch.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like Johnny Depp and that were in there as well, weren't they? So I mean, it was they didn't take any. They didn't just take any old, any old.
Oh,
person.
Exactly. Bloody right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I was saying to other people, like Vic and Bob seem to factor in a lot of comedians' careers. Obviously, Bob featured a lot in Dan's career. Obviously, kind of finding him for Shooting Stars and all that kind of stuff. But it does make you wonder whether there's this kind of 6 degrees of separation. You could probably link everyone in British comedy at the moment in some shape or form.
True. We're only a tiny island, aren't we? I mean,
well, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. I mean, you can link everyone. I'm sure. I mean, Vic and Bob, you talk about them. When I was in my early 20s watching Big Night Out, I mean, to work with them, I mean, I'm so thrilled. And I've worked with them, you know, I've worked with Vic Reeves I've worked with them both a few times and little sketches over the years. We did something called Monkey Trousers years ago with Alistair McGowan and the like, which was great fun. Met them doing that. And I did this pilot I mentioned with Charlie Higson and Paul Whitehouse. was called The Honeymoon's Over, and Jim Moyer was in that, Vic Reeves, and then doing House of Fools. Oh my God, it's like being with your heroes. Just an absolute thrill. And I always think their sort of surreal comedy is not necessarily, it makes me laugh hugely, but it's not something I can do. I would love to be able to do that. I think if I was a comedian, I'd love to be like them or Harry Hill.
Yeah.
But I just can't write that stuff. My brain doesn't work like that. I'm very much more traditional with here's the line, here's the setup, here's the middle bit, here's the punchline. But I love that when that surreal comedy somehow strikes a truth.
Yeah.
When it comes out of somewhere and you go, oh God, I can see why that's surreally brilliant. That is what really does it for me.
Well, that was the thing, like, as I said, we're watching Big Night Out for the first time. You were kind of like, oh my God, these people are talking the same kind of language as me. Your parents were looking at you going, what are you watching? What is this?
Yeah, the only thing is, I will say that sort of surreal comedy has been going for centuries.
Yeah.
Every generation thinks they invented this kind of out of the box nutty stuff. I'm sure my parents were thinking, well, we saw something like this with Monty Python. Yeah. And before that, they would say, we saw something like this with Wilson, Keppel and Betty.
Yeah.
Or, these people going back in time. So there's always been a sort of surreal thing. And I think every generation thinks they own it. But my son now shows me slightly oblique stuff from the internet. And I'm going, I don't see what is funny about that. And it's got some surreal twist.
Yeah.
He's only doing the same as I did with my generation. Well, don't you get this? This is odd. Just because it's not rational. And so I kind of, I
That's
get
it. No one was doing that. No one seemed to be doing that. The time Vic and Bob first kind of came to public attention, nobody was doing what they were doing. All this weird, no,
surreal
stuff.
Well, I suppose, where did it come out of? If you remember the sort of, you're considerably younger than me, but in the sort of mid to late 80s, that kind of very right on, politically correct Ben Elton style
Alexei Sale kind of thing.
And that was all sort of slightly political and on the nose. I suppose it was crying out for something that wasn't like that and that was completely left of centre. At the same time, I would started doing, I know it's a bit later than that, but, things like the 11 o'clock show and stuff. Suddenly we weren't seeing this kind of right on stuff. It was bending the rules a bit and being sort of surreal and also, and not being surreal in the case of that, but being postmodern and not sort of being so right on. So maybe it came out of that sort of time.
Yeah, no, you mentioned Harry Hill there. He's totally reinvented himself, hasn't he? When you look back to what he was doing in the early 90s, he was just doing the most mental stuff, in his live stages. And, I can't, the amount of times I saw him live, he's just incredible. And he totally reinvented himself. He's now become this family. You've Been Framed and all these kind of on cooking shows and things.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. It's lovely to have people who are funny like that. I never used to like, and I know this is sacrilege to say this, but the sort of Bob Monkhouse, cheesy, shiny floor ITV crowd, Ted Rogers. It's nice that, before anyone shoots me down in flames, I know Bob Monkhouse was a genius. I know he was a brilliant comedian, but sort of hosting those kind of shows in that cheesy manner, classic sort of game show host. It's lovely to have people like Harry Hill now.
Yeah, it was of its time though, wasn't it? I suppose people will, in say, 50 years time, people will be looking back at what we're doing, what we're seeing now and going, oh my God, watching robots.
Say Gordon bloody Ramsay. Why was a chef hosting a quiz show? So maybe we want to see a return to some kind of,
I don't know. No, it'll all be like AI. It'll be like robots telling jokes and stuff. Well, be like Max Headroom.
That's a bloody good idea, isn't it? As a pitch that.
That could be a new
hosting. Yeah, why not?
Bring back Max Headroom, I say.
Actually, funny. First of all, two things. Max Headroom was made by the prosthetics guy I mentioned earlier.
Oh, really? Oh,
How
wow.
funny. We should mention that in the same. Yeah, he did that. But the other thing is, if you ever remember the Peter Serafinowicz show, which I did, Peter played a character called Michael Six, I think, who was a sort of, robot host, which was ingenious. So it has been thought of before, but only in a sketch format.
Well, no, but we won't mention that. Maybe people will forget it was done.
Exactly.
So let's talk a bit about radio work now. You've done a huge amount of radio work over there. Obviously, Barry's Lunch Club, Claire in the Community, to name but a couple. So, I mean, has the way that you work as an actor, comedian, changed that much in the last year? Have you kind of had to find new ways to be creative?
Yeah. I mean, us doing this, we're sort of au fait with it now, setting it up, setting the microphone up. I had to buy all this stuff.
Yeah.
I've had my garage now I use as a sort of studio. I've really had to, I like anyone, what's the expression? Necessity is the mother of invention. Just because, what could you do? And I don't think it'll ever change now. People have realized actually you can do this from your house. So I've had to do that. As I say, there's one thing I've really, really struggled with, which is a real pain for my family, is sitting still and not working.
Yeah.
Mainly because growing up, my parents, they went to work at 9 a.m. They came back at 5. I was just always brought up with this thing. I've always felt mildly guilty about doing any of this for a living. So I just can't, I'm a bit of a workaholic. So I've spent this time in lockdown. I can't bear that feeling of lethargy. Nothing's happening. Oh, I might go for another walk now. I've done the bloody whole series of the podcast. I've recorded these live shows, been writing my live show for touring, doing all sorts of things. Now nearly finished the second series. I don't know any other way. And actually, I don't say that as a kind of false modesty. I don't want to be like this particularly, but I just can't bear sitting still, watching the clock tick. This idea that, we just got to stick it out, the lockdown. We just got to, not long now. I'm thinking, this is my life.
I know.
This is my actual life ticking away. Yeah. I don't want to sort of lose a few days and just put up with it. I'm 53 now. It's bloody valuable to me, this stuff.
What's the thing? The last year we've kind of lost, I mean, obviously we've still been able to be kind of vaguely productive with technology moving as it has, but it must be a killer for creative people like yourself, comedians and actors. And
well, I think genuinely, if you can, and I know not everyone's got the money, but if you can afford to buy a mic and a sort of interface box and some speakers and do your own stuff, you have to, you're obliged to do that. What is the point? And if you were the sort of person just sitting around waiting for your agent to phone you, it's not going to happen. And that seemed obvious to me fairly early. You just have to sort of, and I mean, it's not like you can't ignore the fact that there is the technology to create stuff. Whether you can monetize it is another thing, but you've just got to sort of roll your sleeves up in some way or other, which I think a lot of people do, but it must be difficult for a generation of actors probably just slightly ahead of me who were used to waiting around for a voice agent to phone or an acting agent to phone. I mean, I can't think of anything worse than wasting your life waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, like the Edward Foxes and Judi Denches and, those kind of people.
Yeah, to Edward Fox and Judi Dench. I'm not accusing you of being useless. Maybe they don't have to. Maybe they don't have to.
I'd say they don't have to do anything these days.
No. People will come to them. They'll always come to those people.
Yeah, but I mean, Patreon as well has been a great little tool for a lot of podcasters.
Yeah,
a lot of people seem to be turning to Patreon now as a way of monetizing. I mean, obviously, it's not a huge money spinner, but I suppose it's nice to have that little connection with your fans.
I mean, look, it does earn a little bit of money, but I think you have to keep topping it up, and you have to keep giving people stuff, which I'm a little bit guilty of not doing. I don't charge very much money, God. So yeah, that's a good. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, and I think some people, what's really, really kind about some people is that they get it, that you're struggling. You can't go out and do a gig. So for their £3 a month, they don't mind subbing you a little bit. I've heard that before. It's the same with the people who are holding on to tickets to my show. They could have cashed them in, but I think people understand what am I supposed to do about it? I can't even get on stage.
Yeah.
So Patreon is really, really, really handy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even watching the way you and Dan, do the Angelos and Barry videos, it's all very
homemade. Yeah. I know. Well, we are particularly useless at technology. I think Dan is slightly worse than me, and he
seems to be. Yeah.
But I think also, oddly, he has a bit of a problem with bandwidth or something in his house. You wouldn't believe the efforts we go to. We've got a phone propped up to do it on FaceTime, and then you sort of with the headphones on, and then you're recording on this equipment.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hellish.
Yeah. I know Dan normally has his Zoom in front of him,
I know. But
it's great, it all adds to the experience at the end of the day.
I hope so. Yeah. It'd be nice to do something that's, maybe further down the line, it's just going to get easier to operate this stuff, and it won't look quite so charmingly amateurish, what we're doing. But right, for now, people are forgiving.
Yeah. No, we've talked Georgia, your lovely daughter. She's doing very well with her acting, following in her dad's footsteps.
Oh, thank you for mentioning her. That's
in
nice.
The Alienist, she was very good in the second series.
Yes.
And her music career as well.
Yeah, my daughter Georgia Lowe, Glow, for anyone out there, she's an artist. Glow, Glowe. She honestly, she joined my acting agent. And I was thinking, look, trying to warn her of the perils of this business. She's seen me so often in my life with my head in my hands, wondering what it is all about. Goes for like a job, gets it. Spent 6 months in Hungary filming, in Budapest for The Alienist with Dakota Fanning and what's his name? Evans.
Oh, Luke Evans. Yeah.
Luke Evans. And so she is an actor now, and I feel very sorry for her because, of course, it was great for her, and she got a singing career, and it was all going very, very well, and it stopped dead for her.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping she can get back out there and start performing again, and productions start again with TV. So yeah, she's very, very good, and it's not just me saying that as her dad. I think if I was watching her auditioning and I was thinking, God Almighty, I think by now I'd have said, this isn't the career for you.
Yeah, don't do it.
But she's very natural. And, she sort of does have an advantage in that she doesn't wander around like the party's about to start. She kind of gets it, that it's a career and it's not very glamorous.
Yeah.
Nothing glamorous about it.
She's a good all-rounder though, isn't she? She's obviously got a lot of strings to her bow.
She does. Yeah. She's great. And, I wonder whether one day she'll have to choose between one or the other, acting or singing. I don't know, but it's a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it?
Yeah. It's nice to keep a foot in both ponds, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think she's a really great singer. She's always been a great singer, and I'm not particularly good with music. I've never had I tried to sing. I've sung in various things, but she can actually properly sing. So.
Yeah. Oh, we liked Barry's Christmas single that he released.
I didn't realize I was going to have to. I did have to sing a bit in that, didn't I? Yeah.
I played it on my radio show, so
I remember.
There was a lot of people.
I remember.
A lot of people heard it, so but it went down very well. So I mean, who would have been your comedy heroes growing up? It seems to be a very generational thing. A lot of people will say Python, and then people of another certain age would say the Goons. Would you have been like the Ronnies or?
Yeah, the Ronnies, 2 Ronnies. Ronnie Barker is probably my favourite. I mean, when I think, I've said this before to people, when you think about Fletcher in Porridge,
oh man,
part of me genuinely can't believe that guy didn't exist as a person.
Yeah.
It's so bloody warm, endearing, 3-dimensional. Maybe it's just growing up with that, and that was on television. You're sort of the artifice of it somehow bleeds in, and you think it was part of your history and it was a real person. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I knew the Barkers in Pinner because they grew up. They were from around our way, and Adam Barker, his son, who things went a bit wrong for him.
Few issues.
He used to go to the studio school in Pinner where I went, and he was in my drama group and what have you. So and he was like a sort of local celebrity as well in Pinner. So he was absolutely one of my heroes. Richard Bryars was one of my comedy heroes who I worked with Renaissance quite a lot. Another fella, his mum taught my brother at playgroup in Hatch End. So there's all this kind of local connections.
It's all connections.
But I mean, I think those are my favourite comedy actors of the time. It was nothing particularly sort of odd, and there was nothing strange about my taste. They were very mainstream. As I said, Mike Yarwood was one of our heroes, a brilliant impressionist. And but my brother and I were. I mean, we also liked the Python stuff. And then when we got into our teens, we liked the Dangerous Brothers.
Yeah.
And we had that big album. Do you ever have that We Are Most Amused album? Which was all those people, Alexi Sale, and that sort of alternative group who were coming through in the early 80s.
The Secret Policeman's Ball as well was another.
All that. Yeah, absolutely. We had all that stuff. Not the 9 O'Clock News albums. We really loved that. Rowan Atkinson we loved. And then the Young Ones, Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, that sort of stuff, and then Vic and Bob. So honestly, those people are absolute heroes. I've met lots of actors in my time. And I used to do a lot with Kenneth Branagh's Renaissance Theatre Company. And I met, Hollywood actors, big Hollywood actors I've met. But those, I mean, I think, Vic and Bob, and if I got a chance to work with them again, or Ronnie Barker and Richard Bryars, those, I can't work with them anymore, but you know what I mean? Those were my absolute heroes. The biggest thrill to work with those guys.
Yeah. Oh, Vic and Bob are filming their new film this summer, The Glove. So get in on that.
Okay.
Get yourself in on that.
You sound like my parents. I think, I'll put my name down. I'll go and queue up. Easier said than done.
Give Bob a ring and say, why have you not phoned me? Where have you been?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, talk about Ronnie Barker. Were you in an episode of Still Open All Hours?
I was. Yeah, I was. That's right. It was David Jason in my day. No, I went up there to Doncaster to film. I mean, that was thrilling because I remember it was the first day they ever had the London Marathon, probably 1981-ish. My nan took us to see Open All Hours being filmed at BBC Television Centre. That was thrilling. That was another thing that absolutely gave me the bug. You see cameras there and this lovely set, beautiful set that looks like the real thing. So it was sort of thrilling to then be in the remake of Open All Hours in whatever that was, 2013 or something.
Yeah. I mean, to even work with David Jason, he's such a legend.
Yeah. No, that was good. And met a few friends there. Johnny Vegas, who then came to perform at my 100 Club gig.
There were a lot of quite famous actors now that were in the new series.
Yeah. No, it was deeply thrilling to do that. And I have a feeling we were the last people ever to film in that studio in Teddington. It could have been. So yeah, lovely. I mean, I've had my finger in various pies with, iconic shows. I'm delighted to say that.
Yeah.
Even if it was just for one episode.
I know, but it's one episode is better than no episodes.
So. But I suppose so. I'm always slightly embarrassed though. People say, oh, I saw you on Ab Fab. And I think,
Yes.
I played a bloke who put up a Christmas tree, had like 2 lines and then disappeared.
Oh, you always look so young, when everyone puts up these little screenshots of you in like the Fast Show. You looked about 12.
Well, it was 20 years ago or something, wasn't it? No, more than that. 25 years ago.
25 years. Well, they did. Yeah, it was an anniversary, wasn't it? Quite recently of the Fast Show. 25 years.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've been going for a long, long time.
But yeah, Kenneth Branagh, where's he now? Do you know what I mean? Where's Branagh now?
Where is it? Yeah, Ken Branagh, he was very good to me. I used to be his stand-in when I first started. And then he put me in, various films of his. So I have a lot to thank him for as well.
He's a good guy, isn't he? You look at all the stuff he's done. He's over in Dublin quite regularly. Obviously, he's got the Irish connection, but he's still pumping out the work, isn't he?
Yeah, no, he's really good, and he was very loyal to me. We did Another Country when I was 14, and then what did we do? I went and did a show at the Edinburgh Festival in 1990, and he was up there with Renaissance Theatre Company, and he came with Emma Thompson to see my show, and he said, would you like to join Renaissance? I was like, yes, I would. So he took me under his wing again there, and I'd love to work with him again sometime, but who knows, one day.
Where would you be now if you'd said no?
Well, exactly. Yeah, no, he was really good. I mean, what actually happened at the time, this is true, went to see him in his dressing room at the King's Theatre in Edinburgh. And he said, I just graduated from Leicester Polytechnic. And he said, what are your plans? And I said, well, I might be doing a theatre and education thing for Birmingham Rep. And he went, okay. And he said, do you not want to join us? I went, yes, I would. And he said, what's your immediate problem? I said, well, I wanted an agent. He said, okay, this is a list of people we like to use. These are good agents. And then he said, I'm just going off to do a film, which was Dead Again in the States.
No, yeah.
Try and get an agent. If you can't, phone me, reverse the charges, and I'll sort you out with an agent. So in that meeting with him, I'd gone from perfectly good, I'm not decrying that, to, going to work with his company the following spring, him sorting me out an agent.
Yeah.
And, we ended up doing Uncle Vanya, a few months later. So, he really, really kicked things off for me. So kind. He had a really, a lot of confidence in that he's got Prince Charles to be the patron of Renaissance Theatre Company when he was a young man, put out his biography to finance the theatre company, which actually I know nowadays people bring out the bloody autobiography when they're 3 years old. But, at the time people thought, God, that's a bit precocious of him. What's he got to tell us?
Yeah.
And, got those huge actors to be in Renaissance Theatre Company. And then he got people like Robert De Niro in Frankenstein. So good luck to him. Hats off to him, because he's not the sort of Oxbridge elite. I know people like to say he's part of that kind of loveydom, but he's just a lad from Belfast. So I take my hat to his industry,
So let's talk a little bit about music now. Have you had any great musical loves in your life? Bands or artists that you fell in love with?
I really, the only band I've been absolutely obsessed with was when I was 18, and that was the House Martins.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I loved the House Martins, Paul Heaton, Stan Cullymore, of course, Fatboy Slim. Norman Cook. And, I loved them. There was something about that time was very precious to me. And I used to dress like them, and I sort of had a flat top in those days.
Yeah.
And, I really loved that. I sort of loved everything about them. Now it's sort of slightly embarrassing, but they were sort of very left wing and right on about everything.
Yeah.
And they were sort of fun and irreverent, and they looked young, and I just liked the style. I liked the sort of, what would you call it, charity shop chic about them. Yeah, and then I wasn't so mad about Beautiful South, really. It didn't kind of do it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I love them, and London Nil Hull 4 is one of my favourite albums. And then I went to college, and the Smiths I loved very, very much. And then actually, it's not the only band I really loved. Following that was the Sundays. Do you remember the Sundays?
Oh yeah.
Harriet Wheeler. I love them. I'm to be honest, if it's embarrassing, my iTunes is full of 80s and early 90s stuff. It's almost like nothing since has impinged upon me. So I really like that jingly jangly shoegazing sort of melodic, beautiful melodies. Everything But the Girl I used to love back in the day. That was about it, really. I mean, I used to play in bands who were not particularly jingly jangly, but those were absolutely my favourites, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so were you musical when you were younger?
Yeah, my dad, my brother played the drums, I played the piano. We used to, with the talent contest.
Yeah.
At the Walls Cornetto, it was a part of our act was me playing the piano and him playing the drums. I don't play the keyboard at all now, which is silly because I should do, really. But we're a very musical family in that way. But my dad was he was a semi-professional, used to play in a dance band. And back in the day, in the 50s, when bebop first happened, he was he was always out playing jazz. He was a sort of jazz musician at heart. And there was a sort of snobbery about music in our house, that jazz was absolutely everything, which my brother also chimed in with. And then he got into rock music. But I think the sort of music I liked was very seen as crap, So I've spent a long time, just assuming my musical taste is a load of old rubbish, because it wasn't jazz, or it wasn't classical, or it wasn't rock. It was this kind of fey, watery, lukewarm rubbish. But so that was it. A lot of snobbery about music in my house.
Yeah. I mean, what was the age gap between you and your brother?
Oh, very, very, what is it, 18 months or something less.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
no messing about
we were thick as thieves. Yeah, we were great mates growing up. Yeah, he lives in Denmark now.
Oh, wow.
Where he plays the drums in the evening, and he's a printer during the day.
Any live bands that kind of stuck in your live gigs you've been to that stuck in your memory?
I went to see Mark Almond at the Hammersmith Palais, which I really loved back in the day. And I think it must have really stuck with me only because I was only about 15. I think I went on my own for some reason. But doing that, going to things on my own, I mean, going to football on my own, I don't know why. It's very odd. I would never do that now. But and the House Martins at the Kilburn Ballroom in 1986-ish, I think that was, supported by one of my other favourite bands, the Proclaimers.
Really?
So and I loved it. So not really. I didn't go to masses and masses of gigs. I tell you what, I saw Morrissey at Earl's Court. That he had that album live at Earl's Court, which was sensational. I just love that. Although I've gone off him now because he's saying stupid things, which is a shame, absolute shame. I just.
That's really the thing. As a live performer, he's a live performer and a songwriter. He's incredible. But it's just all the other stuff he's got going on.
I don't want to pay to see him live now. I sort of wonder who. I don't know. It just depresses me that I don't want to hear all that crap.
Just listen to Georgia's singles.
Yeah, my Georgia. Yeah, Glow is my favourite musician now, and she's playing the Notting Hill Arts Club in. I think it's October. I can't remember, but or September. No, well, she's playing that, so I'm hoping that's gonna go well for her.
Get a bit of advertising, sell a few tickets.
Yeah, that's Glow at Notting Hill Arts Club, and I think it's September. Look it up, please.
Is she releasing any more music? I know she's released a few singles.
She's always in that modern way I can't keep up with. She sees. Producers, she records stuff down the line. She's always putting stuff out, and I'm hoping that I think she will be releasing a new album or something soon.
That's if the acting doesn't get in the way.
Well, yeah, let's see. At the moment, her first love is the music, very much, I think.
Yeah, that's good. So thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me, Alex, today. It's been lovely.
Thank you very much. Thanks. I hope people are interested.